Welcome, high school hockey fans, to another edition of This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. I am temporary fill-in host Bill Berg Jr. as MJ Hammett is a walking technical difficulty. With me tonight are Dell Scanlon and Bill Berg. We'll start off without any preamble. We'll give it over to Bergler, and he can talk about some of the games he saw last week.
Thanks, Bill. We started out, Brett and I, at Stevens Point, KB Willard Arena on Tuesday for a sectional semifinal. I know we don't always cover sectional semifinals, but in this section of doom, where four of our top six teams in the state were all packed into this one section, I thought it was worth covering this one. Pretty good matchup, Spash and Hudson. They seem to be pretty much even in terms of depth and speed, but Spash had I think the upper hand with skilled forwards. They had Grant Molsky, Grady Miller, Jackson Schrader, each had more than 40 points on the regular season, and they just seemed to be able to get the puck closer to the net than Hudson was able to do. The shots were actually in Hudson's favor, but they were mostly from the outside with little or no traffic in front of Sperlin, the Spash goaltender. But even with all those high scoring forwards, the hero of the night was Jackson Spies, who had only scored 4 goals for Spash in the regular season in 23 games, but he had a hat trick in this game, and those 3 goals they make up the margin in a 5-3 win. So that was Tuesday, and then on Friday we went to Rice Lake to see New Richmond and Amory. We got to sit up in the coaches' suite there. Josh Engel let Brett and I up there, and it was actually a good place to take pictures. Nice clear glass in front, and we could sit, and it was warm. So a threefer going on up there. The sentimental favorite in that game was probably Amory, to a lot of fans that didn't necessarily have a stake in one team or the other. Because for Amory, their longtime coaches, Tim Henningsgaard and Matt Humpel, announced earlier that they were going to step down after, I don't know, 30 whatever years on the Amory bench. But New Richmond was just too fast, too deep, and physical. They just wore Amory down. The shots were pretty even. The game was even. It was 1-1, halfway through the second period, and then New Richmond just rattled off, 5 straight goals. I think 2 at the end of the second, and then 3 more in the third. And they also have a quartet of highly skilled skaters in Bjorn Bonneman, Matt Unger, captain Catcher Langness, and Steve Chapman. They're all like 40+ point scorers during the regular season, and they each added, chipped in 2 or more points for their cause in this game. And that was Rice Lake. I think you went to a game also.
Yes, on that Friday sectional final day, I saw the Superior Spartans come down to Mosinee to take on the Central Wisconsin Storm, and that was a game really played in thirds. The Storm seemed in control of the first period, jumped out to a 1-goal lead, scored again quickly in the second period, and after that second goal, even though Storm got the third goal, after that second goal, the ice was heavily weighted in Superior's favor. They made a line change after that second goal. They had Autumn Cooper and Michaela Renke playing on separate lines for the first period and up until that second goal, and then they put them back together. And from that point out, Superior kind of dominated the second and third periods. They outshot the Storm 13-4 in the second and 12-4 in the third. They went down 3-0 and then erased that 3-goal deficit, tying it up with, I believe, an empty netter late in the third period. Might not have been an empty netter, not an empty netter. Sorry, I pulled goalie, extra attacker. I'm tired. Tied it up in the third period. It went to overtime, and the Spartans really came out strong in overtime. They had a really good chance early in the overtime period, and they got overzealous with it and got called for charging the goalie while she was, down trying to cover the puck, and that put them in the box. And then just a few seconds later, 14 seconds later, one of their penalty killers got a very obvious tripping call that put them down on a 5-on-3 power play in overtime. And that happened right in front of me. And when uh, the Storm players came off their bench for that power play, they all had huge smiles on their faces because they were in overtime on a 5-on-3 power play. And it only took them uh, less is 33 seconds from when the puck dropped on that 5-on-3 to put the puck into the back of the net and take the 4-3 overtime win. I got a chance to talk to a former Storm assistant coach back from the Pete Susans era about this game, and yeah, he's saw it the same way I did. That for the first period, the Storm really looked in control, and for the second and third, it was all Superior. He felt that Superior just end to end speed, so the Storm couldn't match it. But when it came to cross ice play, making good quality passes across the ice, stretching the defense out, the Storm did a better job. And I'd have to agree that they did. Superior speed was something that they had real trouble with for the second and third period, but they managed to take that early lead and hang on for dear life. And then, a mistake got them the win. Then back to Burglar, for he was busy on Saturday. You're on mute.
We left Rice Lake Saturday morning, headed to Somerset. And we got there early enough that we had brunch. We went to the Sportsman's Bar and Grill for brunch, and we ran into my fan again. We all know I have a fan in Menominee, and she was there with some of her other hockey moms, and getting ready. They were doing the same thing, getting ready for the game also. So that was good. And then unfortunately for her, the game didn't go Menominee's way this time. We had mentioned during our preview that River Falls had a couple of goaltenders that could come up big in games. Luke Linehan and Daniel Lynn each posted big wins during the regular season against teams that they previously hadn't been able to beat. Linehan had a 1-0 shutout against Eau Claire Memorial, and Daniel Lynn, I think, prevailed over New Richmond for the first time for River Falls. So, and then in this game, Linehan was the goalie, and he posted another 30+ game or 30+ save shutout in this game. It was solid in the net. I got to see the first time Jackson Flanagan. I don't know that I'd heard his name before because we don't get over to that part of the state very much, but he's a sophomore defenseman for River Falls. And it took me a while to realize he was a defenseman because I kept seeing him with the puck in the offensive zone, going around guys and through guys and firing shots on goal. Then I looked, he's actually a defenseman and a good defenseman. He got the first goal of the night, with the game winner, with a perfectly placed wrist shot from the left faceoff circle, right in the top corner of the net. That was really all River Falls needed. They did get another goal in the third period. Wyatt Hepful gave them the goal, which either gave them a little bit of breathing room, or if you're one of those who thinks the 2-goal lead is the worst thing to have in hockey, then they had the 2-goal lead, and they kept that for the final 11 minutes and ended up winning 2-0 for their first trip to state since 1997. They had one other trip, and that was in 1997. I think they were 1-1 in that trip. So that was my thing. And then you had one more game?
Yes, I went back to Mosinee to see the Tomahawk Hatchets come down and be the home team against Mosinee. Um, and I expected a much better game than this ended up being. Having seen Tomahawk twice this season, including the Great Northern Conference tournament, saw Mosinee just destroy Wapaka in the Great Northern Conference tournament. And then with their win over Lakeland earlier in the week, I expected this to be a tight, close game. And 12 minutes into the first period, Tomahawk was already up 3-0. Mosinee got one back, but Tomahawk got a backbreaker in the final minute of the first period to go into the intermission 4-1. Added a goal in the second, and by the end of the game, it was 8-2 running time victory for Tomahawk. They were just too fast for Mosinee. The whole game long, Mosinee didn't have an answer for the speed of Austin Lamer and Jonah Dickens, especially those two players, just incredibly fast. Austin Lamer has more moves than most defensemen have any right to. Very strong with the puck. He's an excellent shooter. Their first goal of the night was a wrist shot from the point in center into the top corner above the goalie's blocker. And it was faster than any slap shot I've ever fired. Shoots incredibly hard. And they just kind of ran away with it. They ended up putting 40 shots on goal. They outshot Mosinee 40-23 in what I thought was going to be a close, hard-fought battle. But yeah, they ran away with it, and it was a pretty impressive display from them so far. It was probably one of their more impressive games of the season. Fairly complete. They didn't take a major penalty, which is the first time I've seen them play a game without taking a major. So that's a step in the right direction.
And MJ got his computer working.
MJ finally got his computer working.
Hello, kids.
And that brings us to our players of the week. Dell.
Our Best Western Premier Park Hotel Players of the Week. And the first player of the week on the boys' side, you actually heard Bill Berg talk about him from River Falls. Jackson Flanagan had a +5 in Section 3 with 3 playoff games, had the game-winning goal against both Somerset and Menominee in the sectional semifinal and final. And our boys' player of the week is Jackson Flanagan, defenseman from River Falls. On the girls' side, we're actually going to go to the southern part of the state. And from Cap City, the goaltender in the regional final, a 3-2 victory over the Badger Lightning as the 5 seed. Knocks off the 4. Then they went on to take on Rock County in the sectional semifinal, where she made 29 saves, allowing 1 goal in a 2-1 overtime victory over the Rock County Fury. And then in the sectional final, she had 47 saves, allowing 1 goal in a 2-1 overtime victory over the number 2 seed Metro Lynx. And our Best Western Premier Park Hotel Player of the Week on the girls' side is Sophia Martinelli.
This is probably something I could have looked up, Dell, but has a 5 seed ever gone to the girls' state tournament?
I do not believe so. I was going to look that up today, and I fell asleep again this afternoon. What can I say?
All right. Now we will move on to the state tournaments themselves, starting with Division 2, which gets the Thursday morning games. Number 1, New Richmond takes on number 4, Tomahawk. And then number 2, Fond du Lac Springs takes on number 3, River Falls. I will say that New Richmond is the best team that's been on Tomahawk's schedule this season. Tomahawk has had some strong games against good quality teams, and they've come out on the wrong end of them in times when they shouldn't have. They played University School at a tournament at the Community First Champion Center over there in Grand Chute, and they outshot University School 31-12 in that game, but lost 3-0. And that's kind of been their story in a couple games. Like they have a loss to Marshfield that they shouldn't have, a 4-3 overtime loss where they outshot Marshfield 46-20. Tomahawk is fast, and because they're fast, they can skate with a lot of teams, but they've got just some of those games where it's just not there, and they can't have that against New Richmond. New Richmond, obviously, we've said it before, plays in the Big Rivers Conference. So they play Hudson twice. They play Eau Claire Memorial twice. They play Chippewa Falls twice. They played, obviously, River Falls twice. They played Menominee twice. Those are all, the case of River Falls and Menominee, a 1 seed and a 2 seed, or a 2 seed and a 1 seed. Hudson, Eau Claire Memorial, and Chippewa Falls were all in our top 6 in D1. So Tomahawk's not going to show New Richmond anything that they haven't seen before. And Tomahawk's really going to have to pull it together in that one. They're going to have to be disciplined, stay out of the box, do everything right, and then see if their speed can get them some goals. I gave myself a little project the other day, yesterday, because some people are asking, we had gotten some questions, why are River Falls and New Richmond in different sections? And I pulled up the Google Maps and I made a map of all the D2 teams. And it kind of showed pretty obviously why they're in different sections. It's just the way the map works out. But then I updated my spreadsheet of enrollments, which I hadn't updated in a couple years. Tomahawk is like the third smallest enrollment in WIAA boys hockey. St. Mary Springs is the smallest at 263. Spooner's 365, Tomahawk's 370. That's ignoring the 3 private schools that opted up into D1. I don't know what their enrollment is. I didn't look that up, but Tomahawk, 371 students in a state tournament. That's something that you can really only get from 2-division hockey. And the second game is River Falls against St. Mary Springs. And they'd like to believe it, but St. Mary Springs will not be the best team that River Falls has faced this season. As we mentioned, they're in the Big Rivers. They've played Hudson twice. They've played Eau Claire Memorial twice. They've played Chippewa Falls twice. They've played New Richmond twice. They stole wins against New Richmond, the number 1 team in Division II, and Eau Claire Memorial was the number 3 team, I believe, in Division I. I don't have the rankings right in front of me. So River Falls, it's going to come down a lot, just like it did in the sectional final. It's going to come down a lot to their goaltending. I assume Linehan is going to continue between the pipes. He's the older one, and he got the sectional semi in the final. And Springs is going to have to find a way to solve them. But Springs is also a really strong team, and they've been to the state tournament now 4 years out of the 5 in Division II for a reason.
Yeah, Springs has gotten back one of their forwards who missed at least a good chunk of the season, and Gabe Braun, and he's just been on a tear. He's got 11 points, 8 goals, and 3 assists in their 3 playoff games. So he's been on a tear. Isaac Sable scoring for them from the defense. Austin Westergaard has been playing hurt, but he's still effective out there, and they still have Armani Fisher. So they got guys that can put the puck in the net. So Linehan is really going to be tested, and the defense for New Richmond is going to be tested as well.
Springs outshot Oregon in that sectional final 58-31 for Oregon, who had been ranked number 2 pretty much since week 2 or 3 of the season, and have been getting first place votes that whole time. For Springs to outshoot 58
is a lot of shots.
Yeah.
That's a lot of offense.
Yep. I mean, 58 to 31. I mean, overall, that's 89 shots. That's a heavy hockey game. It's not a lot of defensive play. Do you want to make predictions?
I was just looking it up here to see, talking about Fond du Lac Springs, to see, if there's anybody on the Division II side that they played. And they did play New Richmond. They played New Richmond back around the middle of December and lost 7-4.
Just like the Oregon game, not a lot of defense happening there.
No,
Score was higher, but
yeah. I watched quite a bit of the Oregon game, and Fond du Lac Springs was just the better team. It didn't help for Oregon late in that game. I know I'm late to the discussion here, guys, but it didn't help late in that game when Andrew Jakey takes a 2-minute penalty for goaltender interference. Your best player goes off the ice for 2 minutes and you're trailing by a goal. So that was one of those games. Anyways, let's not digress. But
well,
I
I
did
think
note
you
that
mentioned that New Richmond game, the Springs New Richmond game. I wasn't sold on New Richmond at the start of the season. When it came to our top 10 voting, they opened the season with a 6-2 loss to Eau Claire Memorial, and then December 15th they had a 5-4 loss to Fond du Lac, not Springs, in overtime. So I was not. I mean, they outshot them 37-21, but they lost that game in overtime. So I wasn't sold on them. It was their win against Springs 7-4 and their follow-up win against Mosinee 6-1 that really made me get back on the New Richmond bandwagon.
I'm just got open to that box score here, and I'm kind of looking here in that New Richmond game with Fondy Springs.
And New
Patrick
Richmond held them
Langus
to
had a pair.
16 shots.
What's
Well,
that?
I don't think they're going to play anyway. I think we're going to do predictions. As much as I'd like to see Tomahawk, one of our northern teams, win down there, I think New Richmond's going to be able to handle Tomahawk. But I've seen each of these four teams. I really liked the look from what I saw yesterday or Saturday from River Falls. The Wildcats. I think they have it in them to pull the upset on Fond du Lac Springs, and then they're going to be up against New Richmond again in the championship game. And it's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season.
Well, they split, didn't they?
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, because Daniel Lynn had a 48 save.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
3-2 win or whatever for River Falls. So
Yeah. So
my money, my not money, because you don't gamble on high school sports, but my not money is on New Richmond. All right, Dell disappeared, but we're going to move on to the girls tournament, where number 1 Central Wisconsin takes on number 4 Cap City, 2 seed against a 5 seed. And number 2, St. Croix Valley Fusion takes on number 3 Bay Area Ice Bears. That was 2 number 1 seeds facing off against each other. Go ahead, Del.
Central Wisconsin and Cap City met earlier this year, as Central Wisconsin won that game 6-1. Cap City has been playing better at the end of the season, but I don't know if they have the firepower to keep up with Central Wisconsin. I mean, you've got to see them. Central Wisconsin can apply the pressure, and the games that Cap City seems to win are ones where they're able to keep it a close game and battle it out for the win. On the other side, St. Croix and Bay Area played, I think it was St. Croix's second game of the season or so, and they beat Bay Area in that game 4-3. Bay Area's come on strong uh it throughout the season. Personally, I was surprised they ended up with the number 3 seed. They beat Central Wisconsin late, split on the season with them. Uh, but the way the seeding came out, I was a little surprised with the way the seeding was. But with this, I actually think Central Wisconsin will be able to win that first game, which you would expect the over the 4 seed, a two over the 5, however you want to look at it. And then the 2-1s matching up. Uh, that's going to come right down to the wire, I think. Uh, St. Croix, I was a little surprised with the 4-1 victory in the sectional final. They split with Western Wisconsin on the season. The last time they had played them in the regular season was an overtime game won by Western Wisconsin. But I guess if I had to make my decision on this, I think that my final state tournament girls championship game could be a rematch of our Storm Fusion. Could we have another big overtime like a few years back?
You mentioned the Bay Area beating the Storm right at the end of the season. That game was 1-0 in overtime, which would lead you to believe that it was a close game, but it wasn't. Bay Area outshot the Storm 44-10 in that game, and which is a huge departure from the first time the two teams played when the Storm outshot them 22-21. Evenly played game, also went to overtime. Storm won that one 2-1. I was talking to Chad Holmes, who does the radio of the Wausau and Storm games up here in central Wisconsin, and he said that last game of the regular season, he'd never seen the Storm with their backs against it like they were against Bay Area. And Claire Calms, their goalie, was the only reason that game was even close. That said, that game, looking at the Storm's performance all season, that looks like an aberration. I mean, those two teams played once already the year, and that was not what happened. And then obviously the Storm just beat the number 1 team in the state. So, I mean, the Bay Area Storm game from earlier looks like an aberration to me anyway. I think that the championship is going to be Storm versus Bay Area. And I think the Storm will probably pull it out.
Well,
Yeah.
my not money, because we don't bet on these games, is on St. Croix Valley and Kendall Sunby getting the one thing that she doesn't have on her resume, and that would be a state championship. I don't think the St. Croix Valley Fusion has won a state championship in a while. And I think that's the one thing she needs to complete her illustrious high school hockey career.
I think that you have been charmed by River Falls. So you're big on River Falls and St. Croix Valley Fusion, who are based out of River Falls this year.
You were bringing up about the aberration in the shots of that game with Central Wisconsin. I wanted to look and see what Bay Area's season-long stats were when it came to the goalie. They actually outshot their opponents 838 to 330 on the season. Their goaltender allowed 1.52, and so yeah, honestly, I could see it the way you're saying. It being Bay Area, Central Wisconsin, Bay Area trying to defend their state title, and I could be wrong here, but are they going for a three-peat?
I believe you're wrong there.
I can't remember who won it 2 years ago.
Wasn't it Fox Cities?
You could be right, MJ.
Well, don't ask me. I don't remember what I had for breakfast.
No, last year was
Yeah, 2022 was the Storm.
Bay Area last year. 22 was the Storm. 21 was Chippewa Falls, and 2020 was Fox Cities.
Fox
Okay.
Cities 2020 was Fox Cities three-peat. No, it was only two in a row. WIA just has it listed twice on the all-time state champions list. They have the 2019 team listed twice.
Oh, because they beat Hudson 2 years in a row, 6-5 in double overtime, both times.
Both of them were played in 2019 for some reason.
Yeah.
It's just a PDF WIA. It's not that hard. Come on. So yeah, I mean, if it does end up Bay Area versus the Storm, one, that will be very disappointing because those are the last two champions meeting up again, and we like to see new blood get in there. But I still think that's what's going to happen.
What's going on Friday down there in Middleton?
Friday is the Division One Chippewa Falls #1 versus Brookfield #4. Those are both 1 seeds, and then Notre Dame 2 seed at the second spot, taking on and Madison Edgewood 3 seed in the tournament. They were a 1 seed in their bracket. That should be three really good hockey games on the D1 side. Right now, Chippewa Falls looks kind of unstoppable. I believe they've won 17 games in a row, which is a pretty impressive go of it. But don't count out any of these other teams. Brookfield that well.
Yeah, they won, whatever many games in a row. But in addition to that, during their playoff run here, they haven't been scored on yet.
That is correct. They beat,
which gave McMarlowe some consideration for the player of the week. With 3 shutouts in his playoff games, it just like it wasn't
any of those teams took was 19.
There weren't very many shots on goal. They just played really strong defense.
Yeah, the most shots they've given up in a game in their 3 playoff games was 19 to Eau Claire Memorial. I believe Spash only put on 16 or 17. Everest was right around the same amount, maybe a little lower. So yeah, they're not letting anybody even close to their net. Tell us about Brookfield, MJ.
Well, I don't know. The way you guys talk about Chippewa Falls, I mean, what should I tell you about Brookfield? It's almost like they don't have a chance, but yeah,
Well,
you
they have
ask
a
those
chance.
guys, what's that?
Everybody's got a chance. That's why
Oh, sure.
You just
Sure.
have to tell us why Brookfield's going to win.
Why Brookfield's going to win? Boy,
I mean, they're 18-5-1.
they're 18-5-1. You know what, though? The thing that concerns me is I don't think they've seen a team like Chippewa Falls this year.
I mean, they played
Honestly.
Spash, who was the 2 seed in the section of death.
Yeah, and they
played
tied them.
Notre Dame.
Okay. I don't know. The way Chippewa Falls is rolling now, I mean, it's gonna be hard. I mean, Brookfield's got some kids that can score. They play pretty good defense. It's gonna come down to, I think, Brookfield's netminder. Their goalie is gonna have to play awfully well against Chippewa Falls. Because as we all know, Chippewa Falls can put the puck in the net, but so can Brookfield. Question is can Brookfield keep the puck out of their net? We'll see. But Chippewa Falls has got to be the favorite in this game.
On the other side, we've got the 2 private schools, Notre Dame Academy against Madison Edgewood.
And they did play this year.
They did.
And What do we got here?
Edgewood won that game Notre Dame won that game 4-3 in overtime.
Oh,
Shots were really low in that game for an overtime game, 28-23. And each team only took 2 penalties, which is surprising.
you know when I did see Edgewood earlier in the year, they played Middleton pretty well. This is one where I've seen both teams play. They played Middleton well. They came back another time and they beat Middleton in the sectional final. And it was even a more open game than was as close the first time. But I've seen Notre Dame once, and I've seen them against who did I see them against? Verona. And I thought Notre Dame looked a little bit like the Notre Dame that was the state champion. Um, they controlled things on defense. Uh, they should have had at least 4 or 5 goals in that game. I mean, netminder for Verona played outstanding that night. It was only a 2-1 game, but um, I think Notre Dame being a young team. I mean, this is a different group that won last year, but at this point, I don't think I can count them out. But you know, the goalie for Edgewood's pretty doggone good, Rowan White. So Notre Dame's going to have their hands full with just being able to get pucks in the back of the net. But Notre Dame's defense has also played well. So this is the one I think is going to be a super close game. This is the one where I think could go overtime.
Well, Notre Dame coming into the tournament, they had to beat Bayport, which they did. I think it was 2-0 with an empty netter. In 3 games against Bayport, they scored 3 goals total against Devin Russley, Bayport's goalie, one of the finalists for the Kirk Dobbinspec Award. One of the other finalists is their opponent, Rowan White, in this one. So we know that a good goalie and some solid defense can keep them off the board.
Well, and that game that MJ was just talking about when Notre Dame beat Edgewood 4-3, that was the only time that Edgewood has given up more than 2 goals in a game this year. 2 goals has been their limit. Other than that, they got that about a half dozen times. They gave up 2. The rest were 1 or none. So that game was a blip on the Edgewood normal like radar.
This is going to be like a 2-1, 3-2, 1-0 type game.
Yep.
It has the makings of that, yes.
Yeah, Edgewood
Yes.
on the season. Edgewood on the season is giving up 0.99 goals per game.
Told you there were a lot of 1s and 0s on there. Couple of 2s.
10 shutouts in a 24-game season.
Well, and that game against Notre Dame, every goal in that game was an even strength goal. Edgewood outshot Notre Dame 28-23, including 7-1 on shots in the overtime, in which they gave up the 1 goal in overtime to lose it 4-3. So, yeah, this could be interesting. Both teams had 2 penalties in the game.
So I'm going to make a prediction about this one. It doesn't matter who wins. Our Facebook comments are going to be flooded with people saying that private schools should have their own league. And they're just going to completely ignore the players on the ice. Because I had to deal with our Facebook page way too much the last couple of weeks. And I'm tired of reading it. But that should be a great game. The winner of that game, whomever it is, take on the winner of Chippewa Falls and Brookfield. So who do you think takes the whole thing for D1?
Chippewa Falls.
That's my pick. And for the first time ever, I am taking all the number 1 seeds. Every year that we've done picks, I have never gone straight ones, whether it was 1 division for boys or 2, but I've gone all number 1s this year.
Well, Division Two, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say St. Mary Springs. Chippewa Falls in Division One, and part of me really wants to see Kendall Sunby get her state championship to wrap up her high school season, but I think it's going to be Bay Area repeating.
You know, the one thing that was mentioned when I was in Rice Lake for that sectional final game that New Richmond won, is a good part of, well, what they're going to have to be on the lookout for, New Richmond, is, you know, what refs are assigned to their game, because they play such a strong physical game. If they get refs from the southern or eastern part of the state, they don't really like that style of play. I can see them going to the box a lot with the wrong officiating crew out there.
Tomahawk will have that same issue.
The northern teams have that if they get a southern officiating crew.
So what you're saying is officiating in different parts of the state can be a difference.
Yes, it always has been, and that's why coaches who think they have a chance, you know, at going to state, you know, will play in different areas of the state to try to get a feel for what it's like.
And, you know, teams that play in Minnesota say the same thing about when they go to Minnesota. It's just what gets called and what doesn't, and how things are handled is different. And that goes, you know, it's different between what happens in the Duluth area and what happens in the Twin Cities area. You know, every region sort of has its own feel. The rules are all the same, but, you know, so many things are open to interpretation, and hockey's a very fast game. How things get called changes.
And, you know, while different areas, I think, get told at different parts of the year, we need to emphasize on this part here, you know, we're going to put an emphasis on this year and stuff. And when you have your Dane County Hockey Officials Association, you get your different officials associations like that, and they say they're going to emphasize this part during the year, even though the WIAA might come out saying this is what we're going to emphasize. You still have your different associations, I think, that emphasize different things too.
So, we've heard complaints from northern coaches. I believe the exact quote, this happens to us every year down here. To my mind, that means you need to adapt, not everybody else. But, you know, I'm not going to name that coach who is now retired.
Well, I know when my kids played youth hockey, and they played in the Wisconsin-Minnesota Hockey League. But then we played some of our games down in Dane County and everything. And we knew that going to Dane County in that area, they called it tighter than what they did in the Wisconsin-Minnesota Hockey League.
See, when I was in youth hockey, we didn't have that conversation, but we knew which refs were homers. Growing up in Anago, we knew when we were in Mosinee that if there was a call that could go either way, it was against us every time. There was no question about it. And you know, we knew which rinks had homers, but we didn't know. Yeah, these guys call whatever more often. We didn't know any of that.
No, what we did know is when you went up to the UP, they didn't even have whistles. They didn't call penalties up in the UP.
It's gonna say anything goes.
Yeah.
Slows the game down. Let's say for a good chunk of the Storm Superior game, the refs put their whistles. For most of the second and third period, the refs put their whistles away. I saw two players that I know are playing college hockey next year at various divisions tackle other people and not get called penalties for it. So
Junior, in that game, the Storm and Superior, and said the Storm won that game on a power play.
yep.
Go back and
I
take a look at the penalties. Were they pretty legitimate penalties?
Yeah. The Superior had a really nice scoring chance early in the overtime. And they got too aggressive with it and they ran the goalie while they were trying to, get the puck out of the pile up. And they got called for charging the goalie. And it was a good call. And then the tripping that came 14 seconds later on the penalty kill was a legitimate trip. People who listen to the podcast know I have complained about tripping calls in girls hockey for the last 20 years. Longer than we've been doing the podcast. It seems like every time a girl falls down, someone gets called for tripping. But this one was actually tripping. It wasn't two girls fighting for the puck. One of them fell down, so the ref's arm went up. This was actually a penalty. So they were down 5-3, which was tough for them, but them to the breaks. Some people will say let them play, but what they mean is let them cheat. There are rules for a reason.
It's funny how you bring that up. I was actually watching one of the college hockey games this last weekend, and might have been Notre Dame against Michigan. And one of the announcers actually brought it up, saying, people say to let them swallow, the officials need to swallow the whistles here. He says, well, if you do that here, then as a referee, you are deciding the game, because then you're, by not blowing your whistle and calling what's a legitimate penalty and stuff, you are deciding the game by letting anything go. So
Yeah, there was just a tremendous open ice hit in the Tomahawk Mosinee game, and the Mosinee player took some time to get up off the ice, and the whole Mosinee section of the crowd wanted a penalty called. It was a clean hit. There was no charge. He didn't leave his feet. He didn't raise his elbow. The player he hit had the puck. He was in the act of playing the puck when he hit him. It was a completely clean hit, and I expected, just based on the crowd reaction and the hit itself, that a penalty would be called, despite the fact there was no actual infraction on the play. That's where I've gotten in watching hockey now. I'm like, he hit him hard. I expect a penalty to be called. Penalty wasn't called, and that was the right call. Even talking to the Mosinee scorekeeper between periods, they're like, yeah, that was right in front of us. There was no penalty there. Like with the other guy in the box, the rink announcer is like, oh man, where's the penalty? And like, he didn't do anything wrong. That was a clean hit.
That's what a lot of people assume when it comes to penalties is, you get along the wall and you hear the big boom or the glass rattle or something, and oh my goodness, that's got to be a penalty. Well,
Especially like against the boards, they always look and sound worse than they actually are.
especially at the Coliseum when they played there.
Well, the Coliseum boards bent so much they'd throw you back on the ice.
well,
Yeah,
the one thing that I've noticed in the past few years though is I've seen a lot of very good checks along the boards, but at the same time, I've seen the checks where that person going in to put the check has left his feet and made the hit. And
Charging.
I don't remember the last time I've seen that call.
I mean, I saw a charging in the Mosinee Tomahawk game, but it wasn't because the player left its feet. It's because he skated from the corner to the top of the faceoff circle and blew a guy up, and he got a 5-minute major for it. So I mean, that was towards the end of the game. But we'll move on from there to our final thoughts. Our first one we'll do is the Wisconsin Prep Hockey Awards ceremony. For anybody that wants to attend, it's open to everybody. It is on Friday evening at 6 p.m. We had to push it back because they spread the games out. It is at the Marriott Madison West, which is near Bob Suter's Capital Ice Arena. So after you take in the Division One, the second game, maybe grab a quick bite to eat and then head over to the awards ceremony where we will be handing out lots of plaques and naming 11 winners of our awards. more than there were before because we added Division II. And then I added to the final thoughts sportsmanship because I saw a lack of it among the student bases of both the winning teams of the games I went to, Tomahawk Hatchets and the Central Wisconsin Storm, and just following along like I do on Twitter, talking with Chris over at New Sports Radio at Voice of BP. He linked me to a Facebook post by the athletic director at Notre Dame, where Notre Dame is actually like trying to identify some kids who, after their win over Bayport,
I did see that.
said some things that they shouldn't have. And it's like, come on, that's 3 out of 12 that I'm even aware of were the winning team in their sectional final, where the student portion of their fan base has just acted like asses. And knock it off. You make
You
your
know,
team look bad.
can you kind of wonder sometimes if the WIAA could sanction a team for one reason or another because of that?
I don't know what the rules are, and I know that the WIA is made up of its member schools, so I mean they'd kind of have to want it. But like, yeah, there was. I don't know the specifics, but I know that the student sections from Tomahawk, from the Central Wisconsin Storm, and Notre Dame Academy all had some sportsmanship issues after their sectional final wins, and just knock it off.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you see any problems at yours, Burglar? Or did the New Richmond and River Falls fans comport themselves with class?
They did for the most part. The only things it might have been the Menominee student section was saying not nice things about the officials. But nothing directed against the other team or nothing like that. They just had a couple of chants that they would do when a penalty was called on one of their players, that they didn't agree with. But other than that,
I'm not saying don't chant. I'm not saying don't do the back and forth chants. That we can't hear you or we're not talking to you or whatever. Those are fine, but at the end of the game, time is winding down. Don't be an ass. Grow up.
Every year it's cool when a team wins. They have their chants and stuff, but when they have to when they point out that they're the winning team, the other side's a losing team, I don't know. That just kind of jerks my chain a little bit.
With 527 students and Tomahawk making their first trip to the state tournament since 1991, do you think the school will even be open on Thursday?
Nope.
Like, is Tomahawk High School going to be open? Or are they just going to put everybody on a bus and say we're going to Madison?
Well, a couple buses. Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be one or two kids who want to keep that perfect attendance.
The basketball team has to stay back. Well, and Wrestling State is also this weekend, isn't it?
Nope, that was last weekend.
Oh, okay.
No, the wrestling team competition is this weekend.
Okay.
It was the individual competition last weekend.
Okay.
So they can't all come down because I'm sure they've got like wrestlers and stuff, basketball players. But yeah, like 527 students. That's a small little school.
Up there in Tomahawk, what youth hockey association is that?
Tomahawk.
What would that be, like a class
3?
Like a 3? Yeah. Okay. Because I know also there's state tournaments for youth hockey this weekend, which we always kind of frown on, but nothing ever changes with it.
Oh, they tried to change it one.
Changed it. Yeah. They did it one year and it didn't make a difference.
Right. They did. They made a big point of not doing the youth tournaments on that weekend, and yeah, they had no effect at all on the attendance at the high school tournament.
And like the problem with attendance at the high school tournament is sort of mitigated by the fact that they're playing at Capitol Ice Arena now. The fans of the various teams can fill that place. The problem with attendance at the state high school hockey tournament has never been the other state tournaments or anything like that. It's the fact that there aren't enough people whose teams aren't there that go. When Minnesota Double A fills the XL, I want to make it clear, Double A boys is the only one of their divisions that actually fills that building. It's not because 20,000 people showed up from White Bear Lake and Edina. That's not because 15,000 people who aren't associated with either of those teams showed up, and that's what we don't have in Wisconsin.
Well, right,
Right.
your uncle, your mother's brother, who spends his winters down in Arizona, is coming up for the state tournament because he does every year. Minnesota.
I mean, at the Alliant Energy Center, we could have had 8,000 people that are not affiliated with any of those teams in that building. You just weren't showing up. And, we see complaints on the social media like, oh, they should go back to the Alliant. Why? Are you going to show up, or are they going to be playing in front of a quarter full building? Because if it's just the fans of the teams, it's never going to be
No.
It's never going to be huge. You have to show up because you want to be there. Burglar and my mom started going to the state tournament well before they started Wisconsin Prep Hockey. And if we weren't doing Wisconsin Prep Hockey, he'd still be going to the state tournament every year because he wants to see it. And that's what Wisconsin needs. It's not something the WIAA needs to do or something Waha needs to do. It's something the fans need to do. You need to show up when it's not your team.
Right, and one of the comments that was made, with the two divisions, and they're playing more day games, that doesn't allow the casual area fan, to go there and catch a night game. And I forget who was telling us that, and I said, well, they're not doing it anyway. The only time you get a large fan base there when it was at the Alliant was for day games when the kids could get out of school to get on a bus and go there. And you would have 5 buses come down from Fond du Lac, or, 5 buses come down from Stevens Point. The schools that were close enough that they could make a day trip, of a bus, then you would get people in there. Or when Rock County showed up with 5 bands.
And with the current schedule, it's not like they lost a ton of evening games. They lost two evening games. The rest of the tournament is the same as it was before. There's 4 games on Thursday, 2 are in the morning, 2 are in the evening. Now there's just 2 games on Friday instead of 4. So there's 2 games that were lost. Take the time off work, use some of those precious PTO days and say, you know what, I'm going to use them for hockey.
You would think so. And you even look at like when the local schools would get there, and kids would say, hey, we're gonna go to state and we're gonna watch our team win. And more often times than not they did, but I mean, did they come out enough to fill the place? No. So
Anyway.
I guess at this point,
And it's worth noting, those last couple years at the Alliant, unofficially, just based on what we could view, the Division II teams drew more fans than the Division I teams did. And that's not just the private schools. That includes the public school Division I teams. The Division II teams drew better.
I wonder why that was.
Because they hadn't had a chance before. When was the last time Lakeland got to go to a state tournament? When was the last time, Tomahawk is going to bring a lot of people this year. Eagle River hadn't been to the state tournament in a long time. New Richmond had been there more recently, but still it had been a while. Rice Lake, when was the last time Rice Lake was in a state tournament? The 2 divisions there's some people who think they should just go back to 8 in one division for the sake of the tournament. But 2 divisions has really energized those small towns because it's hard when you have a school of 527 students and you have to compete in a sectional against Spash, who has like 2,000.
I would agree with all that.
That's why every sport has multiple divisions once they hit a certain threshold. It's better for the sport. Like I haven't fully converted yet. I'm almost on the side of 4-4-4 rather than 8-4. I'm almost on the side of 3 divisions for boys hockey rather than an 8-team Division 1 and a 14 Division 2.
That's just crazy talk.
I think that could break up some of the bigger co-ops in the Milwaukee area.
Bigger co-ops in the Milwaukee area. You talking girls' side?
I'm thinking like Brookfield.
Waukesha?
Yep. I mean, if Eau Claire can field 2 hockey teams, certainly some of those programs can. I think 3 divisions might help with that.
We're barely getting by with 2.
Yeah, I know. We need more teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But it's getting late, fellas.
Yeah, take us home.
Dell and Bill Jr. Wednesday, we will meet. And Thursday, we will show up at the Cap Ice and watch the state tournaments, find out which of these teams are going to be crowned champions. Now, let me get this.
Morning games
Let
at
me get
9
this.
instead of 10.
Let me get this right. All 3, Division 1, Division 2, and the girls, all 3 of them, the state champion is returning.
Notre Dame, Bay Area Ice Bears, and New Richmond. You are correct.
So all 3 are going to be back to try to repeat. Should be interesting.
Other than Cap City, all of the qualifiers are either 1 or 2 seeds.
Yep. So Cap City Cinderella.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I hope you join us out there at the Coliseum at Cap Ice, and keep an eye on the website because we'll be working on stuff and trying to keep you up to date with information and stats and good stuff like that. And I'm sure we'll have some interviews along the way. So we'll have all that on the website. But it's a pretty exciting week for Wisconsin prep hockey. I hope you guys enjoy it too, as much as we enjoy putting it all together. So for both the Bergs, Del Scanlon, I'm Mike Hammett. See you this week at the God, I almost called it the Coliseum again, at Cap Ice on This Week in Wisconsin prep hockey.